Hi, so today we're going to make a title block in AutoCAD that we can actually put on layouts and customize. So that's what we're going to do today. So to get started, make sure you're in model space and you want to go ahead and set up 4 layers to use. So I'm actually going to have a paper edge layer, which is going to be set to no plot, a title block layer, which is set just to print black, a title block gray, which is set to print gray, and then a title block white, which is set to print white. So with those layers, I'm going to be able to actually draw all the details that I want in order to achieve the design of the title block that I want. Now the other thing I want to set up is text styles. So if I go to the Annotate tab and then Text, I can click here and see I've set up a TB1, a TB2, and a TB3. And essentially these are going to give me some variety that I can then use in our title blocks. So now that those have been set up, I am going to be ready to actually draw my title block. Now this one I've already made, and basically I'm just going to make the same version again, but from scratch. So if we go ahead and with the paper edge layer active, just draw the outline of your page size. So this is going to be an 18 by 24. So you can either use a polyline command or a rectangle command. I'm going to use the polyline so we can see it. So there's my paper size. Now, the first thing you do with your paper size is make sure you give yourself a suitable margin. So I'm actually going to select this and then offset, and I'm going to do just a 1/2 inch all the way around. So now that I have my 1/2 inch, I think on the top and the bottom and the right side, this is absolutely fine. But it might be that most of my drawings are going to be bound, and they're going to be bound on the left side, so I might need a little bit more space on this side. So I'm actually going to select this and pull it in, say, another 1/4 inch, just where you have a little bit more room on this side for binding. Now, if you want this kind of margin to print, you wouldn't want to change the layer. If you don't want it to print, you can keep it as this no plot paper edge, but it still gives you an idea of where things need to be located on the sheet in order to ensure they get printed. So I'm actually going to make this on the gray layer, just so it does print, but it's not the most dominant thing on the page. And so now that I have this set up, what I'm going to do is actually draw out the actual lines and shapes and graphics that I want to actually use to structure my title block. And with that, I'm going to use just various layers to achieve the aesthetic that I want. So now I have the graphics that I want to use set up. I can then go in and add some text to be the labels for each of these fields. So to do that, I'm actually going to use the single line text, and I'm just going to start down here at this bottom corner, and I'm going to click and go directly across because it just needs to be horizontal text, and this one's going to be the date. Now I want to double check that I'm in the right layer, so title block gray is fine, but I want it to be the text style for TB1, so it's a little bit smaller. And let's just move it up, say 1/16, and move it over 1/16, and there we have our label for this particular field. And I'm actually going to delete the colon just to keep it a little cleaner. So now that we have one, what I can then do is actually just CO copy it all the way, so I have a field everywhere I kind of need one for the rest of the title block. So I'm going to do CO, enter, and put in the rest of my fields. So now I have my fields labeled. I am not going to add in anything for the dynamic areas yet, so things like the sheet number and all of the different things that might change from sheet to sheet, but I am going to add in the things that are more permanent and not going to change, so like my own details or my logo. So I'm going to go through and add these as well, and again, it's just going to be with text, and then I'm also going to insert my logo. And with that, we're ready to actually make this into a block. So what I'm going to do is select, type B, just give it a name, and then for the base point, just go ahead and pick the point. And I would recommend picking this bottom corner. And when I press OK, that means I have a grab point here, which is going to be really handy when we place this on an actual layout. Now, we have all of the permanent information we need, but we also need to go in and add some of these more dynamic fields. So to do this, I'm actually going to right-click, go to the block editor, and we're going to go in here and add in some attributes. So let's start with the date. And essentially to add in these attributes, all we need to do is click Attribute Definition, and then tag, so I'm going to just call it date, and then give it a prompt, so date, colon, and then give it a default. Really, this is just a good practice to show the form you want the date to take. And I'm going to make it right aligned, and otherwise I think everything's fine, and then OK. So now, just going to do my 1/16. 1/16, and I'm just going to copy this all the way up. Once they're copied, I'm going to delete the location one because that one's going to be multi-line text that we'll look at in just a minute. But now I need to go through and edit what the placeholders are as well as what the tags and prompts are. So now we've added these attributes that we can then adjust for each and every instance of the block. Now, the next one I want to add is an attribute for the date. So I'm going to go back to Attribute Definition, or the sheet number, excuse me. And we're going to call it Sheet and this one's going to be right aligned again, but then that TB3 height. So it's quite large. And this one I want to make sure it's going to be on the white. And putting it on this bottom corner, but moving it up and over. And that's pointed out that I want to make sure these are going to be on that title block layer. Alright, and now the last ones I want to add are some multi-line fields for this location, for the address, and then for the notes up here. So to do this, what I'm going to do is actually go to Attribute Definition again, and this one's going to be a multiple line attribute, and the tag needs to be location, and for the default, essentially we just need to type in a default. And right now it's that TB3, so it's really large, but I'm actually going to go ahead and make it that TB1 just so it's a really much smaller text field. So there it is, and one more thing I wanted to adjust was making sure it's justified on the kind of bottom right corner. And then let's move it into place. And then we want to do the same thing for the notes up here. So on this one, I'm going to go Attribute Definition, Multiple Lines, click in to fill in a default, and of course, if you have some notes that you use a lot more often than this, definitely fill those in. And I think all of that's fine. Now that it's here, I just want to move it down and over. And I'm going to double check that these are both on that title block layer. So the only other thing I need to check is making sure this has an appropriate width, because right now if I type things on here, it could go off the page, and we want to make sure it just stays within this column. So essentially what I need to do is double check what the width of my band is. So in this case it's 2 inches, so it'll be a little bit less than 2 inches. Then select the attribute and scroll down until it says boundary width. Now if it's not bound, it'll just say 0 inches, but I need it to be bound, so I'm actually going to make it a dimension that's less than 2 inches. So I'm actually going to do 1.875, and that means it's going to stop short before I just type off the edge. And with that, what we can do is press Close Block Editor and save the changes. Now, if we look, there's not much going on here. They haven't added all of my placeholders, and it just kind of looks like the same as it was. To make your attributes show up, what you need to do is an attribute sync. This is going to be the ATT sync command, enter, then press select, and then choose your block, and then click yes. And there we can see all of our various attributes have now loaded in the page. So to place this on a title block, what you need to do is set up your page appropriately. So first I'm going to say page setup and modify, and I'm just going to set it up where it's DWG to PDF, and I know it needs to be full bleed, and we're doing 18 by 24. Landscape, all that's fine. Keep that at 1, so 1 to 1. And I'm using the monochrome plot style, and all that's fine. And so now I have my lovely paper size. I'm going to delete that viewport that's already there. Now to add my title block to this particular sheet, all I need to do is insert, down arrow, choose my new title block, and then place it on the sheet. Go ahead and enter in any information I need to. And then to make sure it's in the right place, what I'm going to do is go down here and look under position X and Y. And because I've chosen my base point to be this corner, I can just say 0 and 0. And that's going to move it where it's directly on the sheet, exactly where you need it to be. And so now I can adjust this. So say this needs to be 002. And really play around with how you can edit and look at your title block and organize your drawing information. Of course, if you don't want to go through this process, I do have some templates in my shop that are pre-made and really easy to edit and can also be customized in terms of your own personal branding.